See, I'm going to see if I can find us in LinkedIn. Can you hear me, Sandra? You can hear me? I can't hear you, though. Suddenly.
What
Oh,
about
there you
you?
go.
You hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm just
Okay.
checking to see if I could actually see us on LinkedIn.
I know. That's what I was.
It says we're live. It actually does say that.
Okay. Well, oh,
Yes.
I can see us.
Look at us. There we are.
It works. It works. Okay. So we are here today. I'm Jill Cruz, and Dr. Sandra, you can introduce yourself too. Maybe we'll say a little bit about who we are. You start.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Sandra Lewis. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've branded myself personal energy strategist because I am dedicated to helping people reconnect with the resources they need to get from that burnout, exhaustion, and depletion to sustainable success. Exhaustion is one of the primary features of burnout, along with the cynicism, the disconnection, the lack of fulfillment. However, I think exhaustion is like that core thing that shows up in many ways. So I work really closely with either individual clients or organizations who might want someone to come and talk with their team members about burnout and how to manage it. On a one-to-one basis, I'm usually working with somebody in a 3 to 6 month program, and then helping them to get to this place where they live from the inside out. And I actually think that's kind of what we're talking about today, Jill, is that place where people get to live from their core of being in the way they feel success works for them. I often call it soulful success, and I think we call it holistic success.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Soulful success. Yeah. Yeah. And I do call it holistic success because that word has been a little bit overused, but the idea that you can have success not work, but also in your personal life, your relationships, whether it's close and more casual relationships, but also in your health, and to have kind of all three of those major areas nourished. Not to say that you have to be perfect in every single aspect of your life, but that you're caring for yourself, and you're striving and getting better in each of those areas. And I'll just introduce myself as well. I'm Jill Cruz. I'm a board certified nutrition specialist, and I'm also a board certified Big Leap coach. And some people have read the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And Sandra, I talk about it all the time. I love the work of the Hendricks Institute, Gay and Katie Hendricks. It's incredible. But that was really important because my business has, for the past 4 to 5 years, has really primarily focused on helping women lose weight in a healthy, sustainable way. And the mindset is so important. The nutrition is like this little slice here, and then the mindset is all this other stuff. So I felt like I needed to have that extra training. But we also do, in the past year and a half or so, have also been helping high achieving women to get that holistic success. So not just to be, focused on work, and no time for me. How can we get a broader level of success in health? Because a lot of times people do, and I'm sure you see this all the time, and literally that's what burnout is, right? Mm-hmm. Like not paying attention to your physical well-being while you're working and stuff.
Yeah. And you actually made me think of a couple of patterns that I see in people. One of them I call the drain doer. And that's the person who's dedicated. They're so dedicated that they kind of never really give themselves space not to work. They work all the time. They work consistently. They may stop to do things for their families, but in their mind, they're still always at work. So they can never quite turn off. That's the person who usually will fall asleep with their computer in their lap, or, they say, oh, I'm going to sit on the couch. I'll bring my little laptop stand and sit myself up on the couch. I'll be comfortable. And then the next thing you know, they've fallen asleep with it. Or the person who might not be able to draw lines between the workday and the home life. And this happened a lot during COVID, where people were working at home and they couldn't stop themselves, right? There's like, and the other person is pattern I've seen is what I call robot on skates, where this person feels like busy is what really determines their worth. If they're not busy, they feel like they're lazy and that they're not doing enough if they're not busy. So these patterns that sometimes we see people going, they almost require you to turn off to your own body, right? Your own body wisdom. Like you can't hear yourself inside you anymore, after a while, if you get caught in that pattern. So yeah, the draining, the doing, definitely patterns that I see.
Yeah, that's so important to be aware of, like your own, your own patterns. So one of the things that we, well, not one of the things, the thing that we said we were going to talk about today is, this one tool that high achieving women could use to achieve what we've already talked about, soulful success or holistic success or true success. So what's that tool?
Right.
Drum roll.
Right. So compassion, specifically self-compassion.
Yes.
Which I think probably both of us see. Like I can imagine like the times when I've been pounds overweight and I'm like, I can't get rid of this weight, and how much I would beat myself up about it.
Yeah.
And not be able to say, well, my body is telling me something, right? My body is saying something. If I'm doing what I usually do and the weight's not moving, then there's something else here my body's saying. And it's like I couldn't get out of the loop of I'm doing something wrong.
Yes.
So that kind of self-criticism that can happen, that when people go after something, it's something that's important to them. When it doesn't happen the way they think it's supposed to happen, or they hit a roadblock, then they can get caught up in these kinds of like thoughts that are less kind, right?
Yeah.
We lose access to our kind voice and we get caught up in our critical voice.
Yeah. You had mentioned that there are 4 components of self-compassion. What are those?
Yeah. It's I said 4, but it's really 3. Kristin Neff and what's his name? Christopher Germer talk about this importance of self-compassion is really being your own best friend in a lot of ways. So one thing is that self-kindness. If you get caught in a bad spot in life and you're saying, oh my God, I don't know why I made this decision, and you just keep spiraling into why you didn't do what you thought you should have done, you're kind of just stuck, right?
Yeah.
In order to get out of that, you have to do what they call self-kindness, which is to treat yourself as you would somebody who's a friend, who's close to you, somebody you have compassion for in that situation, to do that for yourself. The other is to actually be mindful, to notice really how this experience is showing up in you. What are the sensations? The one thing about mindfulness for me is that the more you start to notice when you get into that critical space, how it's showing up in your emotions, the things you're saying to yourself, the sensations you have, you'll also start to notice that those things are fleeting. They're not permanent. Those things change, right? They're not, right? It's the beautiful thing about mindfulness. Like once you go into the moment, you actually recognize that there's the constant possibility of change. So we don't have to stay in this place where we're critical. And the other component is the whole being aware that our experiences are not just us. Because when you get critical, the one thing that you can often say is, I am the only one who's going through this. This is terrible. I don't know why I made this mistake. I have all these examples of people who do things so great, right? And how could I do this? But truthfully, many of us just don't, we may not be sharing, right, how difficult it is. But many people have the same difficulties we're having, right? Many of them are close to us. And so this common humanity, the fact that all of us go through difficult times. The fact that all of us make mistakes, or what we would call a mistake,
Yeah.
is, I'd say that I'd add to this self-appreciation. Like,
Mm.
the self-kindness, the common humanity, and the mindfulness are like the three components that are probably more researched. But I
Mhm.
think there's something for me about self-appreciation. People have challenge. Self-love, where you're supposed to stand in the mirror, those exercises where you stand in the mirror and tell yourself how wonderful you think you are. Sometimes people have a difficult time with those.
Absolutely.
Right? Um, so I think sometimes in order to get us to this place where we're acting in loving ways toward ourselves, is to first just start with self-appreciation, right? What can you
Mhm.
appreciate about what you've done to get to where you are? It may not be all the way, right, to where you want to be, but can you appreciate not only
Yeah.
the things you did, but also the skills, what you had to bring out of you to make that thing happen, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's where the appreciation, I think, is so
Yeah.
important, because we forget that when we get stuck in a space. We actually forget, like, we actually have some tools here, like
Yeah.
we actually can do a thing or two.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's so powerful. I love all of those things.
Yeah.
Mindfulness. The thing about feelings pass. It was very interesting because I've been, I've been meditating a lot, as you know, I told you, and I'm mindful. And what I've been able to do is I notice if I'm having a negative emotion that what I've, eh, if I have the time or the ability, like I'm not going to do that in the middle of a meeting, but if I'm on my own or whatever, or lying in bed or taking a shower, I actually have been enjoying feeling that feeling
Mhm,
without
mhm,
judging it. So if I
mhm,
feel nervous or I feel afraid or regretful,
mhm.
I just look at it. I just look at it and I go, wow, I'm feeling that feeling. And it really doesn't feel good, but I'm feeling it.
Mhm,
And it's almost like, like you're kind of taking yourself up a little bit out of it. And it does pass. It
mhm.
always passes.
Yeah.
I mean, it never stays with you. Like the thing I was upset about last week, I'm not upset. I mean, if I really sit and think about it, I am a little bit, but I'm not feeling those strong emotions
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So, but on that note, something that just came to mind is if we suppress the emotions, then I feel like they come back with a vengeance. They don't fly
Yeah.
away like they should. They kind of stick around and they get
Mhm.
stuck in your body.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's a plug to actually experience your emotions, even if they don't feel
Yeah.
so good. No, I mean, I listen to a lot of old books from like, I like romantic, not
Mhm,
romantic, historical fiction.
mhm,
And, back in the day, people would die of a heartbreak, right? People
mhm.
actually died. I don't know if they make that up or what, but, apparently that
Yeah.
was a thing. Um, but as far as I know, experiencing anger or fear actually will not kill you. So, like, better to, kind of lean into it than to run away from it because
Mhm.
it's probably not going to kill you,
Yeah.
even though it's very scary sometimes to
Yeah.
do that.
I agree. I mean, I think two things you said stand out to me is the idea that we often will make a judgment about what we're feeling. And mindfulness, one
Yes.
of the key components of mindfulness is without judgment.
Right.
It's to just
Right.
observe it without judging it. Um, because, just imagine, like, whenever you feel judged, you either tense up or you move or you run away or you try to get someplace, you try to hide, right?
Right.
So
Right.
essentially, when we're observing ourselves in that way, when we're judging ourselves, it's kind of like whatever piece we're judging has to hide. It has to
Mm,
tense up. It has to, right? And if emotions are energy moving, the energy has to do something. If we're
right.
not going to allow it to process, if we're not going to sort of say, okay, I'm going to engage with this thing, I'm going to try to work through this thing. And, okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, we got it coming over here. Yes. Um,
Oh,
it's
you're
like,
looking on LinkedIn?
yeah, it looks like somebody's commenting. Yes, fear will not kill you. So true. Absolutely. Right. So, you know, if we get to the point of judging it, that might actually lead us more to that place of suppressing. And if we're suppressing
Yes.
energy that's moving, right? Emotion, energy moving is essentially, right, a key component of emotion. Then we are going to get to this point where we're missing something, or we're feeling tight, and we can't really process. We can't hear what this emotion might. We can't treat it as a signal that's guiding us to a better place.
Yeah. That's such an important thing to note, that we see negative emotions or negative experiences as something bad, but within that, and I think you were also saying that earlier about, learning from the challenge, like that resiliency or whatever that we develop, or strength. Look, as far as I know, I don't think that any of us are going to get through life without any hardship or challenge, right? So it's a choice. It's a daily, even an hourly or minute by minute choice. Am I going to face these challenges? How am I going to face these challenges?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think we all reserve the right to be a little miserable sometimes, and to not want to deal with our emotions. Like, that's just part of, I think, again, that's part of having that compassion. But then the question is, when do we kind of pick ourselves up and deal with it, and eventually learn from it? Like, why was that challenge? I don't know why, but I tend to do that a lot. Like I've had my car broken into twice, one in Italy many years ago and one not that long ago. And I'm like, why? Like, what lesson do I have to learn here? Maybe it's that I don't leave my purse in the car, but but that's like a simple example of just learning, instead of just thinking of it as all bad. And you can't do that if you're suppressing your reactions and all of that.
Right. And what I usually will say to my clients is, if something is going on inside of you, it's something there, you can use it. It's there to help you, right? It's not, because I remember this, actually, two of my Qigong grandmaster said something very similar. And then I heard Thich Nhat Hanh on a video, was talking to a kid who was saying, I want to get my anger out. And he said, so do you think somebody came and poured this anger into you? And the kid was like, no, nobody, because we create these emotions, right?
Yes.
If I was anxious about something, right, all of that is created from my life experience, from the things I've learned, from what I've observed in my parents or those people close to me, what I might need right now in this moment. All of those things, right, combine inside of me to become anxiety or fear or self-criticism, right? So now here I am facing this thing that to me could feel at that moment like, this is the worst burden I ever had, right? Why is this thing, right? Why is this, like you said, right? Why do I keep learning this same lesson? So, well, if I'm creating it, right, if it comes from inside of me, if I create that, then there it is for me to use it to help me change. So the sitting with it, like you said, that's one thing. These self-compassion practices are practices that are actually very much almost like the antidote to what happens when we get stuck in criticism, right? So when we're stuck in criticism, we become unkind toward ourselves. Whereas if we're stuck in anxiety, we could even say, I don't know why I'm feeling this. I don't want to feel this, right? This is terrible. You should know better, right? So we can just get caught in this place where we're being unkind to ourselves. And we certainly don't think of a community, right? We think we are the only one, right? We actually become it almost feels like we are only anxiety, or we're only anger in that moment, or we're only fear. We're just depression, right? This is all we are. So
Yeah.
we lose touch with the fact that there's a whole community of people out here who are actually compassionate toward us because they've had these same experiences.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
there's space in the world that actually embraces, us, right? There's a community that embraces us. And forget it. We lose touch with just even noticing ourselves, right? It's like, can I get out of me? It's like I'm trying to escape me,
Right.
right?
Right.
Rather
Right.
than
Right.
trying to be with me, which is the more mindful thing to do, is to be with me.
Right. Yeah.
So all of these things actually take us away from these tools of self-compassion that can guide us through this moment.
Mhm.
And I don't think either of us will say that these journeys are always like 15-second journeys, right? Like they're not 90-second journeys, right? Like it's not like, you might get through a piece of it today, but
Right.
tomorrow something may come and you may say, oh, okay, I got a little bit more work to do. But
Right.
the
Right.
kindness towards yourself, right? The kindness, the being mindful, the recognizing that you're not alone, all those things, you can just keep using them. You can just keep coming back to it no matter how much it shows up.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, and I know you're going to totally 100% agree with me on this, is in order to have the wherewithal to practice self-kindness and mindfulness and to remember that you're not alone, or practice appreciation, meditation is by far the best tool.
Yeah.
Because it brings you it. I'm still trying to articulate how powerful meditation is for me, and I think for everybody. It brings us back to ourselves, and it helps us reconnect with ourselves.
Mhm.
And I believe that we all have, you said like a core, I think you said a core being. Some people call it essence. Some people would call it a soul. Maybe some people would disagree that we have that, but I believe, and I respect the right for myself to believe that we all have this inner essence. And that when we connect with it, that's how we source our power and our energy. And it's actually a spring within us, right? It's an unlimited supply. But it's hard, right? Because life gets in the way. Life is like hiding the spring from us, but it's always there. It's always there. It's always there. And how can we connect with it? Well, meditation is a very powerful tool that we can use, because then once we kind of reconnect, even if it's just for a fleeting moment, then we can develop that wherewithal to practice self-love or practice mindfulness or all of those things,
Yeah. And
so
I think of meditation as a self-kindness practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some people it's, prayer. I don't know if I really personally would distinguish too much. I mean, prayer is different, I guess, but I think there's a lot of that connecting that's happening. For some people, it might be, just being silent or being in nature, or even honestly, sometimes you're just sitting with a loved one or a pet and you feel that connectedness to yourself, to love. So that's where, because I think that so many times, and I think you said that earlier, like, stand in front of the mirror. I love myself. I love myself. It doesn't feel authentic. I don't believe that. So how do I source that self-love is by connecting to myself. So that's my little 2 cents about that.
And when you said meditation, one of the first things that popped into my mind was that I read this book I just fell in love with recently called The Awakened Brain. And at one point in the book, she talked about, it's actually the neurological basis of spirituality, if you will, right? That literally there's wiring, and we actually have the wiring that leans us towards spirituality, right? We're wired to be spiritual, essentially. So, but one of the things she talked about, and she has a lot of different researchers that she features in the book, but she talked about the alpha waves that occur when we reach when we go into meditation and we just begin to withdraw our senses from the world and be
Yeah.
inside of ourselves until we reach this alpha wave, brainwave.
Yeah.
That those waves also exist in nature. So in essence, right, we're tuning to these natural waves that are around us. So when someone goes out in the woods and they just say, like, I cannot manage this, I'm going for a walk in the woods, or they go to a park and there's a tree that they feel called to, and they sit at this tree, right? We're literally matching, right? This
Yeah.
wave that exists in nature that helps us to find that peacefulness inside us, to connect deeply within. We
Yeah.
also match that, right? That wave shows up in us. So it's for me, it was a reminder of how these ancient teachings like Taoism, right, Buddhism, and this whole idea that we're a part of something so much bigger than what we see in front of us, are now, right, research is giving us, right, the sort of westernized evidence that
Yeah.
connections really do exist between us and the world around us, and that they're helpful to us.
Yeah.
That this whole, what is it called, foresting or forest bathing, and
Forest
how,
bathing. Yeah.
right, this is related to people having better, like, stress management. Can you imagine that literally just adding time in nature helping you have better cardiovascular health, right?
Yeah.
Helping you
Yeah.
have better stress management. That tells you the message of that to me is that what you need is right here.
Yeah.
It's right next to you. Just start to begin, right? Just start to say, oh, wait a minute, nature is always here. So
Yeah.
there's always here. There's always also for me here. There's always a part of me that knows this rest, that knows this ease in myself, right? And there's even a yoga sutra that says there's a part of us that is peace beyond words. Peace beyond words, right? So to be able to tap that and to just recognize that even amidst the craziness, right?
Yeah.
Even tornadoes have, like, the core, it's completely calm, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's still in
Yeah.
the core. It's a swirl around the core, right? So
Right.
there's always this kind of core place where we can come back to and find kindness. We can come
Yeah.
back to that place and find this ability to settle and to hear what our experience is teaching us, and to be more kind to ourselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's always there. It's always accessible to us. But I know for a long time I struggled with meditate. I'm like a recovering, not one of those people who walked around going, I can't meditate because my mind is too busy. Like I'm like the classic person who's like, I can't meditate, or let me hurry up and meditate. It's not working.
Okay, I'm done.
So yeah, okay, I'm done. Let me put the timer on. And it was really hard for me to get into that alpha state until I understood, first of all, the brain waves of beta, alpha, theta, delta. I was like, oh, again, like speaking in the more Western terminology of like, oh, you can measure your brain waves, and it's just a matter of like frequency here. Okay, that makes sense to me. But having a tool to move into that deeper state, which I don't know a lot about yoga, but from what I understand, the movement part of yoga is sort of the initial part, right? Like actually yoga is this whole practice where it gets layered deeper and deeper and deeper. And you kind of have to work your way into it. And so for me, a lot of times physical activity was a way to calm my mind. So I would either do some light stretching, or I would take a walk, or even just exercise, and afterwards notice I felt calmer. So I think that the average modern person, especially the woman or the man who's very busy and considers themselves to be a high achiever or ideally a high performer, it's hard for us to turn it off, and to just and to access that inner peace. Like, how the heck do I do that? So I personally, and I know you do yoga nidra, I do the Silva method, and I'm sure there are many other ways to access that. But I think I don't want anybody to think that, just because you're sitting down, closing your eyes, you're not accessing that peace,
Absolutely.
that there's something wrong with you, because that's just, I think, our modern world that we live in. And so find a tool that works for you to bring you into that deeper state.
Yeah. And I think the whole, everything I've studied is ultimately, it's not about this being a thing we do over there, right?
Right.
It's about how do we keep threading this through every part of our lives, right? So just think, like for yoga nidra, like meditation can bring us to that alpha state. Yoga nidra is a practice that can take us through all states of consciousness, from waking into deep sleep, that delta, right? So the important thing to recognize, and one of the things that helps us recognize, is that every transition is a moment when we can be quiet. Every transition. So you could be a provider who's constantly, going from room to room, providing services to people, right? In an office, let's say you're in a medical office and you got patients lined up. But every time, like this is one I've seen physicians do, every time they touch the doorknob to open the door, that's a moment of transition.
Yeah.
It's a moment when they can just drop into that feeling of being at peace beyond words and walk into the room with that feeling. It's ultimately about knowing what this feels like inside of you, so that you can just keep allowing yourself to recreate it over and over again. So even if you're in that meeting and right, I have some deep breathing techniques that I've learned that I can do wherever I am, even if I'm in a meeting, and nobody knows I'm doing it except me, right? But they can bring me to that calm place. So I think it's about us learning how to weave these things in, so we don't feel like, oh, we got to stop and do it. We got to stop and do it. It's more like, how do we keep living in a way that allows us to carry this with us, that allows us to be right. And it doesn't put us to sleep. It actually brings us a deeper awareness.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like, okay, we're out. Right.
Right.
So
it reminds me in a way, like for me, I personally have found that the only way that I'm able to weave that consciousness throughout my day is that I start my day with a meditation and I end my day with a meditation. It's and maybe over time, I'll need that less and less. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I've been ramped up and hyper for so long. It's only been in the past couple of years that I've really started to kind of unwind a bit. When I do that, I feel like I have a buffer. I'm like a little bit more fluffy, So I'm still trying to figure out how to describe it. It's like I'm wearing a nice warm coat, although in the summer, I don't want to say that, but it's a protection, but it does make it easier for me to kind of, and I have my own little techniques that I do, like counting down from 3 to 1, or just bringing my fingers together like this, or taking a couple of deep breaths, that can bring me back. But I'm not at the point where I can weave that into my day without also checking in to myself and connecting with that meditation, like pretty much every day, morning and night,
No, I think that's great, because we do live a high,
high tension,
a high demand, a high tension kind of life, right?
Yeah.
You're managing kids and parents and all these things. You're managing businesses, you're managing goals, you're managing projects. So there's a lot going on at the same time. And most of us live in this way, where there are several things going on at once. So having those bookends on your day is a perfect thing. And then throughout the day, having these small practices that just help you keep sustaining yourself. I think that's the way we do it. Find what works for us. Sometimes for me, it's just like, I can't get any more work done right now because my mind is not settled enough. So let me just put on my walking shoes, go outside, maybe with some music in my head, maybe with a book, but just maybe with the birds, and see what birds I notice, right? What trees I notice, what plants I notice, what pops out to me.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, you know, just right. So in that moment, because now, right now, knowing that the earth herself, right, has these alpha waves that are just kind of out hanging out, I'm like, yeah, let me go out in the alpha waves, right? It's
Get a
like,
tuning fork.
right? Let me just connect with the waves and, you know, find my meditative space, right? So in
Yeah.
that, we get to kind of burn off the sort of excess that feels like it's just running all over the place. We get to settle it. We get to
Yeah.
direct it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then we also get to tune in to something that
Yeah.
helps us find a
Yeah.
little bit more calm. So I
Yeah.
don't think there's any one way for us to do it. I think both of us believe in this. Like when you started talking work with your nature, I was like, yeah, Jill, that right there, that's it. This whole idea that you are literally the solution, right? For me, right?
Mhm.
You are literally this, right? You are, right? It's my tagline is plug into the power of you. You are the
Mm.
source that you
Yeah.
need to make your life the best one, right? The one
Yes.
that works
Yeah.
for you. And in any given moment, that could be something different, right? I always ask myself, you know, what does this have to do with who I came to the world to be? And I might be able to connect it to my purpose. However, in that moment, I have to also say, what can I give in this moment?
Mhm.
You know, I have to be aware of what can I give in a moment. Like I can't
Yeah.
always go whole hog.
Right. Yeah. 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 You know, when you were talking earlier, I was reminded of fun too, because like today I took a Zumba class, which I'd rather do like a hip hop class, but whatever, that's what they have at the gym. And I'm in there and I'm like, there's a whole dialogue going on. Like, I'm not doing this that well. That woman in front of me is doing it better. And why is the music so loud? And how these steps are too complicated. Why don't they make it easier? And then after about 20 minutes, I was like, why don't I just have fun?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't I just stop the dialogue and just enjoy it? And I was like, duh, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So sometimes I think it's just a reminder to
Yeah.
yourself to just relax and have some friggin'
Yeah.
fun, for God's
Yeah.
sakes.
Yeah. I like to say, just be curious. Right? Like that
Yeah.
kind of curiosity, like when you want to learn something, you're really excited about it. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna be curious. So today I might learn the first three steps. That's all I got today, but I'm happy about that, you know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I can appreciate again the self-appreciation, right?
Yeah.
Appreciating
And the
yourself.
compassion,
Yeah, right.
like not being perfect, right?
Yeah,
Like I actually don't have to be good at Zumba. There's
yeah,
no reason for me to do that. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Wow. Well, it's 1:38
yeah.
and we were supposed to be like a
This is
half
one.
hour, although I feel like you and I could just talk
We
forever and
could.
ever about this stuff. But I don't know, maybe we should wrap it up. Is there any last thoughts that you want to?
um, I just want to bring us back to these. You know, I added a fourth component, but this self-kindness, right? Being kind to
Mhm.
yourself, recognizing that there's a whole community of people who are working to be their best just like you, and sometimes not being as good as they want to be that day. And also to just notice, right? To notice yourself without judgment, right? And then lastly, to appreciate yourself. Like
Yeah.
really appreciate yourself. Yes. Thank you so much, Rosie. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you.
We really
Thank
do.
you for the comment. Yeah, it's nice. It's
That was
nice.
fun, Jill.
And this is a recording, so we can share it and other people can
Yeah.
watch it at a later time. So this is great. Let's try to do it again sometime.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
all right.
We'll figure out our next topic. All right.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good one.